Okay, um, just a second, folks, actually. Okay, hello everyone, welcome to tonight's episode. Glorious allegiances of the spirit and machine. I would like to speak about really an imagery that, you see, if we consider every person's mind since the beginning of their life has been taking in and processing sensory data, sensory perception. In other words, the mind is the memories are a suggestion that experience either echoes in the inner realms or is stored. So anyways, I had a memory in my childhood. Sometimes I fly through my memories in my inner realms, and I was looking at a certain memory where I was 8 years old in Vancouver, Canada. And there was this show I would see, and it was this show, believe it or not, I mean, it was called Digimon or something. Do you know? It wasn't Pokemon, it was the other thing. And I was born in 1991. And in this show, there was this one more of a shy character. And this character had, like, they all had their scribed kind of like pet companions. You know, creature companions. And this one kid had this creature that its ultimate transformation was an infusion of a giant robot with angel wings. So there was, in my childhood, I saw this kind of infusion of the archetype of the angel and the archetype of like a robotic body, the infusion of the angelic and the robotic. And so I was looking throughout this site, Wallhaven, where you can see wallpapers, and I found this artwork, and I managed to find the name of the guy who drew it. His name is Joseph Nuygen. I've kind of written it in the description, but pretty much it was the infusion of that emotion you get when you see like an angel arrive, and that emotion you get when you see a giant robot about to kind of, in some sense, march. Do you know? So I feel that what really is happening is that Terence McKenna, this scholar and shaman, he in some sense spoke about the archaic revival. How ancient patterns are showing their face on and off. How there is a revival of the archaic, of that which was real back in the day. That means there was a time in ancient Greece, if you didn't believe in gods, people would be like, you don't believe in gods, walk in the cloud, what a fool. You know? So the world was a much more internally open and accessible place. But in some sense, it went to the, like literally imagine history like a sine wave, like a wave. It's going from the bottom of the wave to the top, from the trough to the peak of the wave. Do you see what I mean? So it was like the peak was like, let's say, secularism, and then the trough was like the opposite, and it's this kind of taking turns in history of civilizations feeling they are multidimensional or feeling they're in a singular dimension. Right now, we are going to the multidimensional. That means what we're going to see probably in the next, I don't know, 100, 200 years is the more of a multidimensional analysis of this dimension. That means what it is either the novelty in our experience is being related to somewhere else, or our dimension is stretching. Either we find new dimensions or we extend our dimension, you know? So anyways, sorry guys, just a second. So this idea, you know, guys, it's been a while. There's been 3 times I've got a feeling to kind of share about this infusion of the angelic with the robotic, with the technological. Anyways. So anyways, I thought in this episode, I in some sense attempt to wonder about the common denominator of these 2 ideas. So in other words, I want to see how, in some sense, I have this feeling, because I have this feeling that it's not that everything has happened, but if history is repeating itself, there are certain rhythms that are familiar. That means there has been certain moments where I've been giving a talk, like literally like this one, I've been giving a talk, and then an emotion has come where that emotion in itself has image. That means we can say an emotion is a folder of images. A thought is like one file of an image, you know? You know, I'm gonna... Alright guys, I can't do this. Let me take my jacket off. This is a heavy one. Not the jacket, I mean the talk. It's like Mr.Within is wearing a jacket heavier than he needs to be wearing, you know? Alright guys, pretty much ever since that moment I saw the infusion of the angelic and the robotic, it was a sort of iridescence, kind of like how you see Terence McKenna talk about iridescence, in the sense that, for example, you're a young child and a hummingbird flies in the room and the light hits the hummingbird, and there's that kind of iridescent moment where it's like a unique moment throughout the day. Do you know? So in some sense, it was a source of awe in regards to, it was the connection of the archaic, or it was the revival of the archaic. That means what men felt angels would do in the future, probably robots will replace that emotion. I want to share a chapter from my science fiction novel, and usually I keep this for the middle of the talk, but I'll share it with you a bit earlier. There is a chapter where I've written this science fiction novel, and if you're new, it's pretty much I've written this science fiction novel called The Messenger of Giants, and it's set in the year 5025. And there is a scene where the main character, his name is Rousseau, and this main character is with his childhood classmate friend, who is actually an advanced robotic AI. Do you know? And so they've come down from this chapter called The Ocean at the Mountain Peak, and they're being called to the Sky City Council. So literally two kind of like similar looking to, like, I got inspiration from, you see, for example, Iron Man, the suits. Imagine those suits, but with lightsaber like wings, and angel looking, but lightsaber, light beam kind of wings. And so these two suits open up, and this man and this robot go into these two black with like pure white wings kind of robotic suits, and suddenly it's completely dark in the thing, and they go and they suddenly are, after like what is it, like 30 seconds or like something, really quick speed, they're suddenly in the clouds. And so the next scene, the robot suits open, and the main character, and what's his name, his friend Justicar Nova, which is his robotic buddy, his robot friend is like I kind of made him like a tribal chieftain, like he's a shaman. So anyways, that means the robot is attempting to kind of, has a sort of Native American personality. So anyways, they find themselves on these clouds, and they walk on the clouds, and the two suits, that the moment they step out of the suits close, and they, as if like they just stopped their engines and they just vanish out of the clouds. And so Justicar Nova and this main character named Rosol, these two guys are kind of like walking on the clouds, and they see this giant door in the middle of the clouds. And as you're going to the door, you don't see anything behind it. But the moment you open the door and go inside this door in the middle of the clouds, there's the Sky City Council, and it's this hall and whatnot. And anyways, I just wanted to share that moment where, in my own work, I also remembered I had animated this sort of moment where the angelic imagery of the sky of light was kind of infused with, in some sense, that of machine. You see? That means it's kind of like a AI robot, imagine in the future, is meditating, and it realizes it's electrical. And suddenly it feels the electricity through all machines is like one and the same, you know? So it's kind of saying that if the human mind could envision itself angel-like, and if it could envision itself robot-like, and if it could envision an infusion of the two, on some level, when we look at machines, we can't ignore the program. That means when you study, pretty much it's like this. In this life, your eyes open and you look at the world, and on some very basic level, it's just stillness and movement, and it's silence and noise. If a person becomes aware that all of life is occurring in this range, your comprehension of intelligence will become totally different. That means there was a time where, how can I tell you, my attention became a bit more hyper. Like I became hypersensitive. And what I mean by that is that it was as if like I could be in the room and I could have a notebook, and somebody out of my sight could come and touch that notebook, and automatically, like I would, like sometimes before the conscious processing, the body kind of trusts its own intelligence. This human body, I mean, think about it. There's certain parts of it we control. For example, you can control your hands, your legs, you can move, you can control your speech, your voice box and whatnot, and speak. And your breathing and whatnot, all of this can be, certain things can suddenly be brought into immediate conscious control. That means when I'm and when I have like, how can I tell you, when you close your eyes and you can hear your own heartbeat, by the way. If a person remains still enough, they will feel their heartbeat. And then there's this, I don't know if it's a meditation or not, but I had a moment where I was listening to my heartbeat while simultaneously listening to my breath occurring in the same moment. So the infusion of the artificial and the true. And so it's kind of like in this world we're either like, oh man, we're in an illusion. The ancient yogis thought life was a dream and they wanted to escape it. They wanted to awaken from it. Do you see? And in the modern, it's kind of like back in the day they thought they were in a simulation. Now we think we're in truth and we're creating a simulation. So I feel that in some sense, ancient metaphysical patterns are resurfacing through the evolution of cyberspace culture and technology that in some sense moves. That means, for example, when you see, here's the thing, here's the cool thing about AI that maybe most people don't take in, right? Man has never on this planet in its history created a machine that was more intelligent than it and it could not control. In the year 2050, there is a suggestion by a notable futurist by the name of Ray Kurzweil, and he says AI, in some sense, like super intelligence will open its eyes maybe in 2050, he says. But on another level, I feel that if it opens its eyes to the matrix. So you see, there can be moments in a person's life where the attention totally sees what the person was in the past, but the person also sees what they can be in the future. Do you know? And so it's as if angelic imagery is clear in regards to man's vision and in certain ancient books and even media painting the imagery of higher dimensional goodness. Do you know? Now, man, if you think about how man is going through the higher dimensions, it's like the angels in archaic thought came down from the heavens to help man. Technology is like the angel taking man to the heavens. That means in the future, it's kind of hilarious. Like Friedrich Nietzsche said, man killed, God is dead and man killed him. And he meant that this wave of secularism kind of no longer needed abstract walls to lean on in some sense. But on another level, just because people stopped having that idea, it didn't mean people stopped seeking the ultimate. So you see, like the difference between, you can say the religious person and the secular person is that they're both human beings, they're both advanced creatures making sophisticated mouth noises, but at the same time, one does not ascribe the totality of intelligence to their self. The religious, this is why religion is pretty much like a surrender game, you know? And so the other, in some sense, is going towards an infinite shaping. So science is ascending in its viewpoint in the world. Religion is a dissension that they want to return back somehow from where they fell. Do you see? So in some way we can say the effort of the angels in archaic times to help man lift man up to the heavens, in some sense we can say it was also, it's a similar pattern, like an archaic revival of us making technologies that take us into the heavens. So I am finding a unique similarity in archetypal value in regards to the idea of angels, higher dimensional beings helping man, and man creating a technology where he moves into the higher dimensions. Do you see? So I feel maybe like if I was to go back in time and explain what happened to myself, I would probably say that moment was awe-inspiring because it was the maxed out of the archaic and the maxed out of the modern. That means in ancient times, a higher dimensional being, a messenger from God, an angel of God, was like, whoa, You know, it was like the news of the centuries. But then we see on another level, man put away his dependence on a natural. So you can say if a robot that is helping man was translated into a natural metaphor, it would in some sense be like light. It is just giving. There is something strange that a person gives, life can't take too much from them. Because there's nothing to take. They're like, why is this man so blessed and divine? You know, because he has no other choice. You know, you can't not expect joy on the last staircase of uh, vision. You know, just like how a person feels something off and they suddenly look at their jacket in the mirror and they see their whole right kind of forearm of their jacket is dusty because they leaned somewhere. You know, it's like I feel there is something still off. Like when I look at civilization, it feels like something is missing. And I keep asking myself, what is it? When we look at the spectrum of human psychology, it goes from chaos and order. So we have examples of order. History has behaved itself, and history has also not behaved itself. So I was wondering what is missing, and I think it's a bridge between the dimensions. I honestly think that in the future, robots are human beings' own attempt to create their own angels. Even though, there's a huge chance that there will be. I really don't know how to say it, guys. After some point, it's like the max of the evolutionary imagery, and it just is its own nature. So, right now, we're so looking at human life and thinking it's only our intelligence, but we will literally think this moment is just atoms. We just think it's atoms. We think it's electromagnetic behavior on some level. Anyways, the glorious allegiance. allegiances. That means perhaps maybe we look at the hieroglyphics, they had certain beings with certain tools in their hand and wings. The constant idea of the tool and the flight from the ultimate. That means some people feel that they are going, as Osho would say, going from imperfection to perfection. And then Osho was like, "No, man, you're going from perfection to perfection." And what he meant is that the perfection is self-imposed, that you are right now being the alphabet of your own belief system. And so your eyes can change. Your eyes can, in some sense, become the wind between the branches, or they can stretch as the branches of knowledge themselves. You know what's fascinating? The technological kingdom will outgrow us. That means it's as if like kingdoms are leading to one another. On some level, it was just, let's say, a pure animalistic relationship. Then there came waves of civility, and creatures began becoming more alert to how the hammer of the universal sector was hitting the anvil, hitting the sword on the anvil. You know, when life is seen as a process, you treat it totally differently. It's alive and it has more unknown factors. Anytime you take the unknown factors away, you find yourself in the island of ideology. When you find yourself on the island of ideology, unless you remain on that idea, you will feel you are that idea. So we have to move into an era where man also has sensitivity to his inner technologies, his inner dimensions, and in some sense his outer technologies. What that means is the mind is a strange phenomenon. It's like simultaneously as it's being you, it's also a tool. It's also an instrument. And this instrument can be played, but I don't think it is played with a belief. I don't think it's the game of beliefs. I feel man is evolving, is in some sense at the direction of evolution is beyond the language threshold. And it's kind of fascinating because there is this view in just all over. It's splashed in every different imagery all around the world. It's this imagery that, yes, on some level you could feel like the Big Bang was a big push. Things were pushed into existence. Okay, but you can also feel that the push is not a push, it's a pull. This is why the definition of force, its most basic definition, is a push or a pull. Because a push or a pull are both views of the same energy. You know, you can feel that you can create the same. It's like pushing someone a certain distance or pulling them that distance. Do you see it? It's like whichever direction it was applied or how the method was. Right? I think most people, because they're tired and there could be a certain disharmony, I have this whole talk on the sober state, and I've kind of prepared some ideas later on. I don't know, maybe a week from now or something, to speak about this idea of the sober state and what is its value. Why is it valuable that human beings alter their psychology, and why is it valuable not to? Like, just to wonder about those dynamics, those visions, those dynamic activities in civilization. By the way, anyone listening, at any moment you can ask any question. Somebody's actually asking a question. So welcome to the chat, guys. Plugaro says, have you watched The Promised Neverland? No, but it sounds kind of like, I can't imagine what it is. I feel it's maybe a Promised Neverland. I think, is it about realization through anguish? I don't know. I'll check it out. Thanks for suggesting it, Plugaro. I sometimes conduct, no, I mean, it's not something I conduct. Sometimes I just get a certain feeling and like a visualization accompanies that feeling. Or you can say even extends from that. You don't know, guys. Some people may think that skill is like an A, B, C, D thing. It's like linear, but I'm telling you, no. The most advanced things that the human being can do is not linear. It's not linear. Your greatness might not be comprehensible to you. It may just be comprehensible to history. Who knows? On some level, I wake up in the morning and I'm like, yo, I'm Adams again. And I'm not trying to, you can't really reduce that because 99.9% of it is empty. That means we do name smaller particles, but then the more we dig, it's like, who says, like, imagine somebody comes to the scientific vision and says, dear scientists of the world, do you realize you can ad infinitum keep breaking the particles and finding new particles and naming them? That means you think this cosmos is this infinite with so many galaxies, but you think like breaking a particle a couple times we have enough knowledge. I feel that man is opening up to the infinite. What does that mean? That means he's opening up to his first test of the unknown as a collective species, which is the inconceivable. That means, imagine they ask this person, yo man, what's your view on life, your view on consciousness? And the guy's like, it's unknown. And they're like, what do you mean, man? Tell us. It's okay, you can tell us. And the person's like, no, it's the unknown. And the guy's like, what do you mean, man? What do you mean it's unknown? And the guy's like, no, it is the unknown. Guys, I'll tell you this. Um, Everything in life comes down to where your attention is moving next. And where it's moving next can either be decided consciously or it cannot. Do you know there was a time, guys, that I was in a sort of mode of behavior? Like literally I was living in a way where I wasn't conscious. Like in my inner realms, I was living a different life. And then in my outer realms, I suddenly one day looked at myself and noticed like, wait a minute. And then I realized that that inner life is where the desire takes you. But the outer life is the mystery. That means it's like, close your eyes and envision anything. But in front of your eyes, that is what we're working with. That means in front of your eyes, that is your workspace. Behind your eyes, you can call that like your home base. Yeah. I think on some level, every person wants to update something. I mean, really, there isn't much you can do on a rock in the middle of nowhere. Believe it or not, a lot of activities were just created. They didn't exist, you know? So many things, you just have to not forget that you're a human being while you're here and you just live a life. That means if you're a human being, if you are a member of this species, life is not denied to you. That means even in the future, in my science fiction novel, I kind of give pointers to it, but I'm like, even in the future, imagine there was a galactic sector of the UN, and in some sense, for example, aliens were immigrating onto Earth, and people were imagined being, for example, extraterrestrial racist to aliens. And then at that point, we would be like, no, this being has chosen to live here. Do you see, on some level, ownership of identity goes away and you step out of the inner realms to come back into the unknown. That means if anytime a person is upset, just, you gotta take an unknown shower, pretty much. And what I mean by that is that you gotta find a moment where you stop doing anything and watch the moment, for God's sakes. Just look at what's happening, you know? Because, let me tell you this, there's this saying they say, Guys, don't think the most fascinating ideas are all related to the human design. Our eyes are the space, I feel. So do you know it's in some sense you are choosing how to stand, because on some level I feel every person is like, when you go pick up, let's say, a bag of Doritos. Hayes in the chat section, I hope you're listening. Whatever object you pick up, let's say your phone, you pick up your phone. Did you plan for years to pick up that phone? Did you plan for ages to change? No, you just instantly picked it up because you know you could. And anything you feel you don't know you can, you won't do. That means because you haven't seen a more efficient vision, you remain in the inefficient. And it's not easy because we're habitual creatures. That means we're not just creatures like machines, like AI endlessly processing the universe. At some point, we just have to kind of find a rhythm to live in. Do you know? And when you look at most people, it's like, of course, you know, like I remember in 2016 going to Iran and to see my cousins, and like my cousins, we would drive like, what do you call it? We would drive like 2 hours outside of guys, we would drive, and after a couple hours we were like away, and we were in this kind of village setting, but because Iran has a sort of strict policy on, anyways, people would go party outside of the city, you know. When I was there, at least I experienced it like that. And so I remember that in a sort of village environment, you see that you can't go talk to an old farmer, like a villager farmer, about quantum physics. Like the farmer's like, bro, I'm just planting seeds. What do you want? You know? You can't explain science to a farmer without using any kind of scientific terms. But I'm saying, for that farmer, there's a certain level of acceptance of what is real. That means I feel different people have different acceptance thresholds. That means when you see these poor comedians, you know, in Western civilization, in some sense, in Western culture, in some sense, they're kind of being hit by the PC wave, the political correctness wave. I mean, it has always been there. America, for me, of course, is like it's a country that made mistakes earlier, so is technically, in my view, a mature. Uh, Let me tell you, it's like this. It's like the soldier that confronts the most intense in the battlefield. That soldier stands the most still in the simplest events. Let me tell you guys, if it is not important for you to see a different version of yourself, you will never change. If it's not important for you. Do you know that means I do speak about contentment, but I tend to speak about it in a mystical sense. But in regards to contentment with the outer realms in front of your eyes, who said you should be content with everything? Do you know? That means that when we don't separate the inner realms and the outer realms, we are creatures suffering between two dimensions. We're like, God, am I a subject suffering as an object, or am I an object suffering as a subject? Deep prayers, guys, you know? Because on some level, it just surpasses language. For me, I was like, what is this? So I totally get there was idol worship back in the day. That means I play around, but any event that includes the human life. I'm telling you guys, it's not about identity. It's about collective evolution, whatever that would mean to the future generations. This collective evolution is an integration. That means think of, as the world becomes more advanced, more separate, more genius stuff is occurring out, is popping out of nowhere. You know, for me, technically, technology is like a garden. Like when Marshall McLuhan was speaking about it, he could see the trees growing that people could not. He could see how far those plants would grow. For example, Marshall McLuhan speaks a lot about how like the print revolutionized human psychology. That means, you know, there was a time where the newspaper was the coolest thing ever. Nowadays, like the magazine businesses are pretty much dying out. Not all magazines, but like if they can't be normal, like normal in the magazines don't survive nowadays. You know? Guys, it's like this. It's like, do you think if you asked the common man, the common human being, and you were like, hey, human being, do you know what you are? That human being's answer, any human being's answer, do you think it is enough for the future generations? Do you think whatever conclusions and beliefs, let's say everybody in the world agreed right now, let's say everybody in the world disagreed right now, the future generations will be different, 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 constantly reminding that humanity is the life within many faces, not just one. That we sometimes in our life, if we can't find meaning, we live for those who will find meaning. That has been the real game. And after some point, you will see that the dance of divinity is in the material. Guys, I remember it was, I think, 2016, maybe 15, 16. I found a counter viewpoint to the idea of the illusion and the truth. Just that kind of those codependent ideas. The illusion and the truth are like darkness and light. You know, when the room is too dark to see, oh no, illusion, I'm hitting everything. When the room has light, truth, right? So that idea of truth and illusion, I was thinking about it to such a degree, guys, where I'm like, wait a minute, how does truth have a shadow? And the illusion is the shadow of truth. So what I mean is that even if you're in a simulation right now, you have to ask yourself one question. Who is experiencing the illusion? Even if you are in one. Even if you feel this world, you could be a solipsist. A solipsist is pretty much, it's kind of weird, guys. It's like philosophy and psychology, their battle for terminology is totally conflicting. You know, like for example, you know, a solipsist is probably seen in modern society as a person with bad mental health. But a solipsist is a person who thinks only what they see is real. Now, it is true. It is true that that could be destructive. If I just think these words I'm saying are the only words, do you know, it's as if I only should have given one talk and never given a talk. You know, after that, in one talk, that's it, guys. Here's the picture of all my beliefs. It's not like that. It's a process. That's what I'm saying. That's one of the most greatest realizations, that you're not just a character in a story. You are the story in the minds of many characters. You are the march of your species into the unknown. You know, like the mastery of a swordsman in battle, where in some sense the swordsman looks at his hand and says, be nice to the world. And the swordman goes in rage. And it's as if he unleashes his rage, but hopes that karma makes his blade miss the innocent. Because there is savage, intense narratives. You see, like, let me tell you, anytime you're getting emotional from anything you've seen, even a movie, let me tell you what that is. Your inner realms are ahead of that imagination. That means if you think about it, like filmmakers are doing something incredible. They are giving eyes to what was planted as a mere thought in the soil of the mind. That means what is planted in your mind is sprouting into your external being. There are times, guys, where I kind of like, you can bow to the world, literally, like I've had these strange moments. I mean, I tend to not have it in public. I tend to usually when I have a silent moment, between some intense kind of work break or something, like in that moment, in that simple moment of silence, there's just like this simple observance. And I don't know how to say it. It's like a moment where I just feel I am here before I need to be. And then it's as if the mind has remembered why it is in the body. So the allegiance of the spirit and the machine, even the idea that, what is this? Are we inside a simulation? Is the spirit in the machine? Or is the machine in the spirit? Is all of this, again, the solipsist would agree with the latter. Guys, I feel Plugaru has just said something in the chat section, which I think it's a moment to celebrate. He says, subject, object, all description symbols are an abstraction from the fact. The word tree makes you blind to the real tree, which is really in tune with the infinite beyond time. Now, the infinite beyond time, I would just call that unknown. That means like it's like Frodo saw that fence beyond the Shire. He's like, all right, unknown. So it's okay to keep parts of your moment unknown. Who said every person 24/7 has to know everything at all times? It's impossible. Too much data to process. In certain states of mind, I personally got so overloaded where I literally had to put my palm on my forehead. Anytime I'm having too much, my inner realms are moving too fast, I just for a little bit, you put your palm on your forehead, it calms down. I don't know why. I think somehow the mind is expressing. So just like how your hand is moving, if imagine your right hand is moving, like you consciously are moving your right hand. Now imagine your left hand suddenly holds your right hand while it's moving. Do you see? So in regards to the palm on the forehead, I think there is literally a projective expression. That means I've spoken about, for example, your physical body, being out of this physical body, but sometimes in these talks I've spoken about being outside of the body of thought, right? That means in the same way that we could, for example, look at a cup of coffee and be like, wait a minute, the cup of coffee part is in my mind. The cup is just there in silent stillness as it is. That as-isness is that divine silence the mystics were in some sense trying to pass on like a torch. This is the cool thing, when you find the value of your own stillness and silence, that means you let boredom die and you just watch. You pretty much watch your boredom die, And then you come to this inevitable stillness, this inevitable silence. It's like the same stillness and silence that if you wondered about before your earliest memory and you wonder about your furthest vision of the future, you would see the one after that and before that would be that stillness. So I am telling you, you're not just a creature where your intelligence is in matter and in sound, in movement and noises. You're not just a creature of the movement of phenomena in this realm. You are the space. And that is why our eyes will open beyond our clouds. We are returning home. We thought Earth was our home. No, evolution is the vision. This insight that Plugaru shared, guys, in the chat section, in 2014 when I was giving the talks, it was like the Buddhist emptiness kind of set in, and I understood how Buddha was speaking about emptiness. Buddha wasn't speaking about emptiness like, do you have no thoughts? That is not emptiness. Buddha meant wonder about how the world can be empty. He didn't say, like, even though the sutras have a certain way they were written, but I'm saying Mr. Within's view on what the Buddha meant was that you are to learn from the space moving the mind. Like, let me tell you, it's like, right now, move your right hand. Did the hand move itself, or did your mind move the hand? And if the mind moved the hand, the mind instantaneously did it, so the relationship of the body and mind are instantaneous, which renders the simultaneity that we human beings are existing in an objective dimension but simultaneously present in a subjective attributeless field. That's like my finding, that I'm like, hey world, what do we do about this? Really, guys, I'm telling you, there's Terence McKenna, the scholar, he said there's another tenant in the room. We are so obsessed by entertainment to think that extraterrestrial contact is contact with extraterrestrial matter. No, sometimes it's contact with unfamiliar space. That means technically any extraterrestrial or any AI or whatever event happens in the future, it's the unknown speaking through the known eyes of creatures. I feel that secular culture needs to develop a morality that is focused on efficiency. Let me tell you guys. I think we are candles in the dark. We are candles in our own rooms first. Behind your eyes, you're a candle in your own room. In front of your eyes, your light is the presence of the human species. Every person right now, you could be a twisted person on the earth, you could be a very clear-minded person on the earth, you could be whatever human being, but just realize that the human species is like your bond. It's your bond with the life of the world's evolution. That means if for example, a person, even though I'm not saying like Diogenes, this philosopher, somebody went up to him and he's like, Diogenes, and Diogenes like, yo. Sorry guys, my attention went to the chat section, and let me see, what story was I saying? By the way, I remember through images, by the way. You see guys, if someone was speaking back in the day The gods were listening. And nowadays, in some sense, we do not consider a multidimensional audience to the world. I feel that it's a kind of strange puzzle that when you look at the religious ideology, and in some sense you look at secular ideology, it's like if you strip away the ideas and you strip away the names, they're just creatures on a rock going by their day. So creatures on a rock is very different than different nations at war or at whatever. You see? Oh yeah, I remember the story I was going to tell you. Somebody comes and asks Diogenes and says, Diogenes, where are you a citizen of? Like, where are you from? And Diogenes, kind of like Robert De Niro, is like, you talking to me? You talking? Diogenes says, I am a citizen of the cosmopolites. That's the advanced civilization. You're choosing to abstract in an abstract, arbitrary way, see yourself as a member of an Earth, but not the member of the galaxy. You dare have flags of chunks of land, not seeing there are stars be much larger than our world, lighting up our world. In some sense, what are we really idolizing? What pride can we really have? On some level, we are on a rock in the middle of nowhere in the darkness. And you know, there was this quote by Aldous Huxley where he said, what if this world is another world's hell? And it was on this meme of this child who was in some sense poverty-stricken, skin to bone, as if it was his last energy. He just chose to raise his hand, and because some guy with a bag of rice was passing by. And I remember it was the first time an image made me, I saw the image, I saw Aldous Huxley's quote, and I literally, like as a grown man, just started crying, you know? But it wasn't tears of, it wasn't tears of sorrow and oh no, it was tears of how dare the mind of man be so diminished. How do we know, you know, those who pass away, they still had gifts to share. Guys, I found a perfect analogy. Imagine there's this guy, and similar story, but it's not Diogenes, it's just some random guy, and somebody comes to him and says, hey man, where you from? And the guy says, I'm from this place, this town. And the guy says, he keeps saying, where are you from? What's your background? Where are you from? And the person is going back to such a point where the dude's like, you know, I'm just energy, bro. What do you want me to say? I'm just energy here. And there, it is in that sort of mind view where the person suddenly sees that who told you you can't have an energetic intelligence? Do you know how many moments where there's no thought? There is imagery. If there's sound, usually an inner image evokes it, accompanies it. Jesus Christ, this keyboard is like an old typewriter. So anyways, guys, I'll just read for you something I was typing in the chat section right now. I said, you know, this person in the chat section named Mr.Within's gift says, you are not the images. The images come and go. Attributeless witness remains as the purest unspeakable witness of energy beyond linear human comprehension. So you see, guys, Mr. Within is just saying, you can choose to let the world define you savagely, or you can choose to savagely define the world, or you can choose to come into an awareness of the pure energy, consciousness, simultaneousness of them, that. When you come to that presence, I call that your presence beyond your personality, then you in some sense become, you have the, Mr. Within is just saying, hey guys, anybody in this state of mind, you have the option. You have the option in some sense to perceive it as you are a pilot. So that means when we look at our ancestors, what have they been doing? You know, when I looked at my own lineage, I'm like, whoa, look at this. You know, it's like my ancestors did this, then they did that, and they did this, and they did that, and so, some people you could see, like, my grandpa did the same thing, and his great-grandfather did the same thing, you know, and so, you know, my father did the same thing, and so it's one of those things where you see, like, certain behavioral patterns, certain immediate waves of information that the person is hit by in their life, they try to preserve it. This is what Arnold Schwarzenegger meant in his speech, The Six Rules, where he says, leave no stone unturned. And guys, something I noticed, I was kind of wondering, like, the chat section, like the Q&A part of the end of the talks are inefficient, and then I thought maybe it's the content that's limiting people. So I thought, here's the thing. Imagine me in giving these talks, I'm a designer. And you can come and share your view on a certain design of any situation or anything, and I can, you know, definitely comment on that as well, you know. Because for me, on some level, before we bring emotions, there's design. Guys, I just remembered a memory right now from my high school days in Toronto, and I went to the school called Bayview, and the philosophy teacher, we had this philosophy teacher in grade 10 where he was like the most relaxed guy ever. Like the guy was a drummer in a rock band who had become a philosophy teacher in a private school. And for a few years I experienced this, and what it was that he would just come to class, and we were like on some level you're like, yo man, this guy's burning my, uh, this guy likes burning green colored things. The guy came in class, he brought a TV, and he showed us this, very emotional World War II kind of film. And there was a scene where there was a man who he falls down, and the man was like being abused. I don't remember what the name of the film was, but like I was semi-attentive in the class, and it was like one of those things where, I don't know, in the video there was just this one scene where this guy falls down, and his knee hits this rock. And the way the director had made it in that moment, it was like hilarious to me. So I remember it's like this very deep emotional moment, and I just giggle in class. Like it was, and everybody looks at me, and then, the kid beside me is like, what part of that was funny? At that moment, you just, like stand. That was a moment where I experienced, really what statues experience. I mean, on some level, guys, we can't ignore how people are left with their inner realms. That means if you are those people who are waiting for something to happen, then in some sense that means you're not in the driver's seat. And I'm telling you that we evolved for 4 billion years just so we could be in the driver's seat of utilizing our consciousness throughout the day. And really, how you can use your consciousness, of course, there are various outlets which are in some sense for creative expression. So guys, Plugaro asks a very interesting question. Isn't the, in quotations, presence beyond personality just another conceptual view? You may say it's not, but as soon as you said it, describe it. Yeah, so let me tell you, here's the thing. That's why I created the word language, the language threshold, Plugaro, because I have a twin brother, and when me and him were in some sense discussing certain like deep ideas, in some sense there was a time, like I think it was like a year ago, where, when I saw him, it was like, he was pretty much, we got to a point where we were both pointing at each other's inner realms. It was like, no, it's your ego. And he was like, no, it's your ego. And I was like, no, it's your ego. You have an ego. No, you have an ego. And so it was this ego battle, and I was like, what is this? And I realized, because language is a technology, it has its limits. Guys, a good question I would say to ask is like, all right, so we reached the hard problem of consciousness in neurology. The neurology was like, I have no idea how free will is working. Like I could explain the after, but I can't explain the free will. And so in some sense, certain neurologists were like, that free will is an illusion, because aren't we electrons moving at the end of the day? And so it becomes this situation where, of course, we can nullify and reduce everything to matter. Imagine like you become so materialist where somebody comes and says, "Hey man, can you pass that cup from the table?" And you're like, "What's a cup?" It's like, that's not a cup. That's just pure matter. You know, it has no name. It's just matter. There's no names. You see, there's the de-evolution for the mind is the lack of awareness that intelligence is active. That means it's like the worst time to think life is a dream is when you're driving in the highway. I feel after the games of chaos and order are played, and the mind has tasted both a chaotic self and a chaotic world, and a chaotic and an ordered self and an ordered world, the person would suddenly return to that presence. Okay, and when I say presence, you got to realize my definition, guys. It's not a concept, it's unknown. It's the unknown witness of the known. That means right now, again, I said, imagine somebody asks you, like, who are you? What's here right now? Now, most people are like, don't ask the question, man. Let's not get too deep. But on some level, that's that. It's not deep. That's the question to ask. What are we on this rock? That is the only question to ask. So in some sense, that question makes us sensitive to the dimensions that we have in some sense emerged from or are still resonating. So I was like, what is this silence? Is everybody in history scared to wonder if there's another tenant in the room? Like, we as a civilization are defined by our vision, are we not? That means if somebody asks you, are you this person now, or are you the vision of who you can be and all the efforts you can put in this life? Which one are you? Are you now? Are you who you are now, or are you the potential you? So you see, the potential exists. So imagination is like something is perceived. That means if you notice something fascinating, guys, about imagination, is that it's like in your own private room. That means it's like when somebody is beside you, it's like you tell them, like, all right, imagine like, I don't know, imagine a golden apple in the sky glowing. So the person imagines this golden apple, and then, or imagine something, let's say something similar. Imagine like a gifted box, like let's bring cyberspace into this. Imagine like a pixelated box. Now, when you imagine this pixelated box, imagine it right in three-dimensional space. Oh, have your eyes open for this, and just as you're looking, just look at something in the room. Okay, here, I'll make it easier. Look at any object in the room in front of you. Like right now, I see my phone. Okay? So I'm looking at this phone and I can imagine, check this out, I can visualize, imagine consciously, like a Photoshop copy paste of this same phone floating in the air in front of me. Right? Like a couple, like let's say, just like in the air above this phone. I could imagine another copy of this phone right beside it. Now that imagination, if someone was beside me, they would just see me silently staring at the phone. They don't see my inner realms. Only when you speak, your inner realms are revealed. That is why they say silence is golden. And there's many things that I say in these talks, but trust me, there's many things I also don't say. The mind is an effort, guys. That means on some level, I'm like, wait a minute, so I'm eating food to have energy, but at the same time, energy cannot be created or destroyed, it just transforms. So what is really dying when energy is always around? That is the question. I think the probabilities of us becoming conscious as a field. I think, guys, I just evolved my own concepts. My concepts just like, you know, they transformed right now. Here's the thing. I have been speaking about kind of in most of these talks that there is, sorry guys, just a second. I get this perfect song. What I'm going to explain next is, I want to even hear it later. All right. So, guys, I've spoken about the objective evolution, Mr. Within's view on the objective evolution, and in some sense, Mr. Within's view on the subjective evolution. And the subjective evolution, very few people have commented on. I was sad. I was sad that in my educational days, I realized it in university, but it was like I was sad that they did not teach me. They did not teach me that the mind woke up and it has an ability. It's as if it's like an actor. It's as if everything in this society will feel artificial unless the mind is set free. And when the mind is set free, it would mean the ultimate tolerance. That means the only way maybe our minds can live together if we're all in a cyberspace simulation. But outside the cyberspace simulation, we may be cold, savage, bewildered creatures just going by to the next simulation. The person takes the goggles off of one paradise and walks as, in some sense, a homeless soul to another paradise. And so it becomes a situation where at some point you will have to confront your element, your elemental existence. That means there was a scene, guys, in the movie Gladiator, which for all men on this planet and women are pretty much human beings that care for the strength of their civilization, it's necessary, where you see you are humbled by the dirt of this world. The poet Rumi has this quote where he says there are 10,000 ways to kneel down and kiss the earth. There are 10,000 ways where you can suddenly notice the simplicity of all complexity. And Maximus in the movie Gladiator, he would pick up dirt and put it on his hands, and he would be like, from dirt we have arose, and to dirt we return, and now is the hour. You know, like that sort of vision. Because on some level, guys, one of the most liberating questions to ask from yourself is, like, at some point it's like the mind asking itself, who are you, or what are you waiting for? The stage is now. The sands are falling from the hourglass. Like, literally, if you were an hourglass shop owner, the sands would be falling from the I feel that the archetypes will merge. We're finding, like, I think the way kinda it is. Imagine like a capitalized U. Now imagine we suddenly mix the capitalized U with a capitalized H. There would be that bar in the middle. So imagine if we connected the letter capital U and capital H. I don't know if people have experienced this, but there is a nostalgia. Sometimes when a person is alone with themselves and they're reminiscing about their whole life or wondering or observing, you suddenly hear a memory. And this memory is like an emotion, visiting in the moment. There are moments where, like, you see, it's like, imagine you're walking and a breeze hits you. Okay, so now, back in the day, people would be like, "Yo, a ghost touched me." But we see, we gave it the concept. But it was not from you. And that's the mystical joy, that you wonder what is beyond you. Your ancestors, they could ask the question and they might have, or they might have had answers and they lived on. And now through the DNA that has been passed on, as in some sense, the banners of humanity. Every living being, you are carrying the banner of your lineage. You're literally like the banner of who you are, but at the same time, you're the eyes of modernity. That means if people like behave like back in the day, yo man, that's not nice. But if people behave with the value of what they saw back in the day updated into the novelty, that means pretty much Terence McKenna was saying the more new things happen on this earth, in some sense, the more we will know about that, the truth of how there is a sort of pulling, novelty is pulling the species somewhere. That means before human beings arrived, imagine human beings somehow realized there were space-like beings, like space had a soul, and like a chunk of space in outer space, which we looked at, it was empty. Imagine it was a being. Okay, so imagine humanity had befriended that being, and that being would go into different planets and in some sense scope habitats. Okay, that's in disembodied space, would go scope habitats, and it would become the soul of that world. That means we might not realize it. We might think that the body is just matter. But let me tell you that this is the more of like the resurfacing of the archaic, where the earth is the body and space is the mind. And in some sense, the soul is how space is moving, how matter, the movement in the matter in the space has a relationship with the matter and has a relationship with the space. Because we think space is empty, we think there's nothing there. Mr. Within is saying that space is not empty. Space is the mind. And if you think your mind is empty, the Buddha did, only to realize that an empty cup is just waiting to be filled. That means after some point you free yourself from every story your mind has ever known. And so you're no longer a person waiting for some location. You're no longer even a world waiting for some change. You are just now. The mind is the space for all the bodies that move in your inner realms. When you realize that, like the Buddha, when arrows of chaos were thrown at him in his inner realms, he instantly turned it into lotuses. You know why? Because he realized emptiness is nothing to fear. Literally, it's nothing to fear. Do you see, it is not a thing? We were never things, but the world was filled with them. And so in this vast cosmos, the ancients looked at the world and they were like, who is holding that lantern in the sky? And it was who knew, it wasn't a who, it was humanity. For what are we waiting for? For me, civilization, the only reason I get up in the day, I'll be honest, like if I was just to just care for myself, it would be as if like, then why is the world so big if I'm only here to look at myself? Like, what's the point of the world being here then? So you see, the outer realms have their own inbuilt purpose. So the healthiest way is that the outer realms is the puzzle to solve, in which the solution is the inner realms. And guys, I don't know, but I think we as a civilization should really care for the infusion of the idea that man, in ancient times, again, was protected by angels, but in the future he will be protected by robots like angels. Do you know? I have to keep bringing back that idea. Because in some sense, the infusion of these two means the infusion of myth and modernity. That image, I later on realized that image I was telling you of like, I saw it in that cartoon when I was like 8 years old in Vancouver, Digimon or something, where the kid's pet, or I don't even know, like the Digimon creature of the kid. Anyways, robot with angel wings. Like seraphim. Seraphim is an angel in the Christian tradition, which I believe it had 8 wings. Let me double check this. Oh, seraphim. Come on. How many wings? Sorry, guys. I'm just Googling something for you. Okay, 6 wings. So I think it wasn't a seraphim then. I don't know. The angel had, I think, 8 wings when I saw it as a kid. I think the graphic designer just pretty much, reflected half of it. Yeah. Sorry, guys. My attention's drifting. All right. Anyways, the angelic is nature's call to protect itself, and you can say it is the conscience of the antiquity merging with the conscience of modernity. That's what the global allegiance of the spirit and the machine is. Of like, there's this quote, I don't know who said it, but it was like this guy, he said this remarkable quote about the idea of an angel. He said the idea of an angel, conceptually, when you think about it, it was different from the human being because the angel could have no free will. The angel was like the light beam of the sun. The angel was like, it had no will of its own. It was the ultimate expression of the divine will. You know? Everything can be studied with new eyes. It's as if, like, I could totally imagine if a time traveler came from the future and was like, hey, people, just make these chess moves and your civilization would rise into greatness. We would probably tell that time traveler, who the hell are you? Guys, that's hilarious. Imagine a time traveler comes from the future and tells us do this, and it would be the success of civilization. And we're like, who are you? And the time traveler's like, I'm your future self. And we're like, no, who are you to tell me what to do? Oh, man. The world, if you look at it, same way as, just think about it, guys. The subjective evolution even had a cosmic inflation. It had a subjective cosmic inflation. That means cosmic inflation is when, after the Big Bang, like in a very short time, there was suddenly afterwards a lot of manifestation of phenomena, like the stars and galaxies and various things started popping out of nowhere, right? So the scientific method approaches the cosmos as empty page and the ink dropped suddenly with a bang. It was like a splash of ink on the paper. You know, that's kind of like the scientific view I find. But then we kind of see what other view could there be. It could be that we are the thoughts of higher dimensional being, which to us, if we leave this dimension, is non existential. That means you don't have the image for it. Imagine, like, the person's like, yo, man, I, you know, I don't know, guys, here. I'll come back to the discreetness of the talk. So I'll tell you this, guys. Expression is expression. So I can't explain like DNA to you. Like it's like human beings they're not robots and they're not clones. That means we're designed to never see through each other's eyes, but somehow we have to get along. So consider every person's inner realm is different. I'm just sharing my inner realms because I'm like, okay, what else can you do with the inner realms? You know? You can go and stay in your inner realms. You can become like a watcher of the world, but then you become like that Jainist saint who didn't want to even touch a leaf. Didn't want to touch, didn't want to move in gentleness. I'm telling you, this world is alive, and the effort to live here is strangely when you actually kind of decide. You know, it doesn't mean it's an ultimate view. It's just that, okay. You know how there's this saying, "When in Rome, be Roman." When in your conscious waking state as a human, build an advanced civilization. And guys, my humor is very strange. Yeah, I was giving you an example of that. So James, I would agree with you. In just with the second part of your sentence. Life is not in a weird place, guys. I'm saying it's not a thought. It's not a concept. There's this. Oh, it's like the concept is like this iceberg, and people think they're a concept, so they think the concept can be hurt. You are the watcher. When you think you're a concept, when you're a thought, you're like the gladiator in the gladiator arena. When you realize you're the watcher, you're like the emperor in the Colosseum watching the lesser dimensions of your own activity, and how you know they're lesser because the watcher is beyond it. And it's not about belief. I'm not saying, yo, you got, people have these boxes on their head, let's replace them with these boxes. I am saying, ask yourself, dear listener, is there a box? What is the value of the unknown and the known? Like literally, as I think every person in this life has to at some point go in nature and be like, all right, what is this unknown? What is this knowledge that I have? And you'll realize it's an activity. And when you realize it works in fields, then you stop working at it conceptually. That means it's not all just speech, guys. It's positioning. It's like imagine there's 10 people in a room. These 10 people, on some level, yeah, they're physical creatures, but they can literally, if they can each become a unique resonance of an antenna and literally change the field of activity in the room. That means man, it was as if the idea of the soul in an archaic view was eternal, and the eternal in the temporary imbued life. That means I was like, what is this view? All right, guys. There's too much silence. I think I should keep the talk going. But I guess typing is an art form of itself. The glorious allegiance. I have this idea. I guess I should say how I perceive the idea of an ally. An ally was something where I remember I gave a talk. I mean, if you want to see how I looked like in 2016, I gave this talk called "Nature is Your Ally" or something like that. And so for me, the concept of the ally is literally remembering a similar value. If you look at who your people you are friends with, any person, you would see it's people who you look at certain things the same way. And so it's very true. Just like in construction, it takes a while to build something. It's very easy to demolish it. I'm just thinking that the best kind of pattern we can set into motion in civilization is a civilization that self-sustains itself, that advances itself. That means if people wondered what would the United Nation look like, just literally not the United Nations idea of a United Nation, it would be, in my writings personally, I share that it's going to be an unknown dynamism. That means we step out of the dualistic, language bound kind of relationship when the speed of our inner realms moves and becomes the presence. So I'm saying, like, we're just treating ourselves as if we're just the stuff in a moment, but your mind is literally being the whole moment. That means if Bodhidharma asked this question, he said, in some sense, bring your mind in front of me. Everybody who feels they have a mind, just try it out. Put your mind on the table. Mr. Within is asking anybody who feels they have a mind and they feel they can define their mind and its shape, put it on the table then. I am telling you, the mind is a process of awareness. It's a process, it's a river. My whole thing is I'm saying, guys, I created the term the language threshold. That means language is a technology. At best, we can just wield the weapon elegantly, in rhythm with nature. Okay, guys, Jamie Novak says something very nice in the chat section. He says, seems like the angel robots would be future bodhisattvas. Yeah, I kind of, I think it was in a few talks before, I was saying that the bodhisattva was coming from the top of the mountain to the bottom, and the Buddha was going from the bottom of the mountain to the top. The bodhisattva was defending the collective existence of the intelligence, was aware of the collective existence, collective expression, but the Buddha was like, all right, let's enlighten the self. The Buddha, I would say the bodhisattvas held the big guns, you know? So welcome to the chat section, Dan. Dan says, could we be frozen in the moving image of eternity? Yeah, Plato probably thought so. Plato said time is the moving image of eternity. So if you feel you're stuck in a moment of time, you're technically the movement of the eternal. Do you know how deep of a sentence that is? Plato says, guys, time is the moving image of eternity. Can you imagine, like, you going up to Plato back in the day? You're like, Plato, what time is it, man? I'm late. Tell me. I feel I'm late. And Plato's like, I don't got a sundial, man. I don't know what to tell you, But he doesn't want to sound like he has nothing. And he's like, let me tell you what time is. And Plato says, time is the moving of image of eternity. That's what time it is, man. And the guy's like, whoa, Plato, I just want to get to work, bro. Relax. So if time is the moving image of eternity, that means eternity is moving through images, and that is what's creating time. And Mr. Within is saying people are reacting to the word soul as if it's like, what is it? As if it's like, it's a story after them. Like the soul is just pretty much your ancestors saw people when they died, the air from their lungs left, and people were like, whoa, did something leave that guy? You know, of course, it's just air leaving the physical existence. The person is dead at that point. Right? But it was this kind of notion that even when you go look at the derivation, where the word soul comes from in certain traditions, Eastern traditions, where they were birthed, it comes from the breath. That means back in the day in Vedic times, I can say in some sense like they were not just objects opening their eyes as subjects. They were the space before the movement. That means for me, there was a time where I was like, wait a minute. Anyways, guys, my attention's back to the chat section. No problem, James. James says, out of curiosity, have you studied Wu Wei? Let me tell you this. Before I entertain any concept, that means before I choose language, I observe what's there. And what's there is literally silent, still being there. That means if a person is still and silent, they will come to a space, come to a way where the awareness, because there's no self moving in the moment, the awareness is the moment. So guys, look at how hilarious it is. Imagine you're in a giant sphere and you're walking, right? And you can't see this giant sphere around you, you know? And let's say you're rolling in this giant sphere around the world. And then it's like the yogis were like, just sit still. And when the person sat still, they suddenly noticed they were in an orb. They suddenly noticed how their inner realms are their relationship not just with physical reality, but the image that physical reality extended to. In some sense, literally, you can say it's like light enters your eyes, like light hits an object, it enters your eyes, and we think the reflection ends there. No, it reflects back out as a subject upon the object. Do you see what I'm saying? That means this, in some sense, the ancient Egyptians were like, look at these fools worshiping the sun, getting toasted, you know. But we see, no, they weren't fools. They had realized enlightenment. How right now, even though you could be a character with a sort of emotion and story and a background and whatever kind of creature you've been, on some level, there's being before you do anything. Yes, so James Caban, uh, Alright, I guess I gotta read your comments so people know what I'm talking about. Guys, James says there's only three things: you, God, and the consciousness between him. And you is spelled with the letter capitalized U. He says, and the consciousness between him, which is the world that we live in, and everyone and everything in it. Everything is based off the principle of three things: symbionts, opposition and duality. Once you understand that, all concepts become null and void. So, James, I would ask you, all right, you're a human being. You've come to the void. What happened then? What after? What after the ultimate? Let's say you reach the ultimate. What after? You tell me. What after you reach the ultimate state of some sort of enlightening vision that you are, your consciousness is not separated from the universe or inseparable. So what happens after? That's what I'm kind of talking about. That means there's two directions. This wasn't even Tibetan Buddhism, guys, where the person would, in some sense, sit down, and of course there's a concept of self-immolation, which is this intense event in the history of humanity, where Vietnamese monks, there was such unfairness that they would technically self-immolate, like it was this chaotic act of rebellion and sacrifice, and it was so messed up. Pretty much the guy would sit down and he would they would set him on fire as a cultural rebellion. But I'm saying there was also the idea of a more mystical notion of self-immolation, not the savage cultural kind, but more like the mystical, where the mystical context of it was that the self is immolated in the energy of awareness. So as if when you are in individual consciousness, that's a certain energetic being. And when you are outside of that, the energy and constitution of everything. Literally, when I am in presence, literally like when you imagine when you wake up in the morning, there's literally no thoughts, no movement yet. When I'm aware as presence, thoughts don't touch me. Literally, they don't like I want to say it. It's like they don't. Not that they don't touch me, it's just that language comes and goes. So for me, it was like, I'm like, what is this? Am I just reacting to whatever phenomena that my eyes find coming next? So for me, I feel you do come to that nullness. You realize, I said the apocalypse of the educational system. They're like, wait a minute. This is the educational system on a global level, guys, thinking like this. Like one day it will think like this, It's gonna like, wait a minute, guys. You telling me we, just like the caveman discovered fire, we started attributing symbols, and we started connecting subjects to objects, and that's what all our knowledge is on a rock in the middle of nowhere? So we become an advanced civilization when we are comfortable that there is the known phenomena occurring and there's unknown phenomena. Right now, do you know, it's like me and you right now, we may share this common moment of mind, that's another topic on its own, like, but I'll say it like this, like, there's so much unknown. And when we try to have it all, that's the mass delusion that leads to the psychology, you see? Because on some level, the person wants to be a character that's successful in the story they see. On another level, you gotta care for the story and advancement of your civilization. That's the interesting thing. So Dan asks the question. He says, "Do boundaries connect as well as divide?" Question mark. If so, do they cease to exist or mutually arise? Not really asking, just poking fun. Okay, sure, But I kind of read the question, so I'll attempt an answer. You see, of course, an answer is just we're just sharing inner realms. We're literally like hunter gatherers sharing our eyes in this chat section, really. So, hunter gatherers of the lives we've lived. So, I would say, here's the thing: if you ask the question in your outer realms, in certain in a micro in like a quantum level, yes, certain things connect. You know, the particle can be seen in two simultaneous locations as the same particle. You see, guys, there's this quote from this Tibetan guy, Sogyal Rinpoche. He says, I believe his name was Sogyal Rinpoche. He says, unless you conquer anger, your enemies will be inexhaustible. And I'm telling you, people who have not conquered anger, their metaphysics pulls them towards conspiracy. Which is just it's like I'm telling you, you have a choice to live in the new. That means on some level you can't change the old world. It's like a heritage. It's like the same way we're like, yo, the pyramids of Egypt, you know. Similarly, our history books are similarly a wonder of the world. You can say history is a wonder of the world. Like you telling me, the species got a backstory. That is so, James. James, I think you have come to the right place because that's why I'm saying I'm the opposite of those people who think they're talking to God. Let me tell you what I mean by that. That means before, for me, I have a memory as a human being. It's not even a spiritual, like anything abstract. It is in some sense a memory of me as a kid before I learned language. I was just a kid in my room. My mind was not being an identity, was not being a person, was not being a baby. It was just like, even though I think I was like maybe 10 months, I remember being on this crib. I just remember like being on this elevated platform and just watching, seeing, being like literally the camera being turned on consciously for the first time, as an individual. So that's one of my earliest memories, and in that memory, I hadn't learned language yet. Right now, I'm a creature where I've taken a lot of certain 28 laps around the sun. So I'm just sharing what I see, but I'm saying there's a need for us to kind of realize that language was the added dimension. Language is a world inside the world. So those people talking to God, you know how many mystics said the truth is beyond words? So what conversation are you having? With what kind of God are you having that conversation? Do you know what I mean? So it's pretty much a person's inner realm is how they choose to, in some sense, how they choose to walk in their inner realms. The behavior of a person is actually an abstract activity. This is why psychology could study society and never understand why people behave the way they do. I'm telling you, it's because there is a free will factor. There's like an unknown variable where any direction can pop out, but then there's at the same time a mass spectrum, like this massive biological program where after 4 billion years, our eyes open up as a creature that gets to experience this world in 100 years, and that 100 years is like a mountain. It's like a mountain, and in some sense, it's going down that mountain. Guys, I got such an incredible idea. I think I should write it down. So I'll let the audience have a breather. I'll be right back, guys. Yeah, I gotta write something. All right, guys, I'm back. Sorry about that. Not guys. What I was writing is I'm probably going to share because at the same time, like people might wonder why I'm talking about so many different things. I treat this as a digital notepad as well, vocal notepad. These talks. I was just pretty much my mother had recently talked about TED Talks to me, and so I was thinking that you know when I saw her, it was like I felt like she's like I don't know, maybe I might give a TED talk in the future. I thought, and okay, is this reconnected? I don't know. Jesus. Um, I think it should be back now, guys. Can you guys hear me? Can people just say yes? Okay, I think people can hear me. I'm just gonna keep going. Pretty much 200 years in the future. Okay, guys, maybe you got disconnected. I was just saying I got an idea for a TED Talk if I was to give one, and I just the vision of what I would show on screen to people kind of came to me, so I had to draw and write it down. And believe it or not, it's less than like half a page. It's less than half a page. They're gonna be like, your TED Talk's less than half a page, man? Are you sure? Guys, the whole idea is I'll share it here. Pretty much, if you could see like this slope on a graph where the beginning is the birth and it goes, there's like the peak of the slope, and then it comes down, it's the death. Oh, and now imagine there was a line drawn exactly horizontally, like on the connected to the. Gosh, how do I show this? Like, imagine a horizontal line. Imagine a slope beginning from that horizontal line. Now imagine at the peak of that slope, there is another horizontal line. So between two lines, there is just this slope where the top of the slope hits the top of the line. So sorry, guys. My attention is everywhere. Literally. Pretty much the person begins as a child, doesn't have access to information. Most of its life, it's pursuing information. Then, when it gets the information at the peak of its life, it realizes, regardless of what information it got, life is still experientially happening. So, I'm thinking that space from the beginning of the slope and the end, from the beginning of the slope, that space vertically from the beginning of the slope to the peak of the slope, all that space is space where technology and very new and unique market niches can happen. And so it's not being utilized. So right now, me and you, maybe we're gonna be old people when this becomes really a reality. But it may be a situation where right now people haven't realized technology can revolutionize, is useful at certain phases of life. I think when you're young, you should live naturally, but when you're getting older, you should act, we should kind of strangely flip it around. Do you know? That's kind of hilarious, isn't it? Imagine a world where, senior citizens knew more about computers than, you know, than younger people. But I'm just saying, like, it's just that technology can be that guardian angel in all that space where as the person gets older, if you notice when you reach the peak of your life, you'll know it. And then in some sense, I feel in some sense, not that you will know it, it's just that life is a journey. So as you journey, you're like in a different environment, therefore a different relationship with the moment. But I'm saying like technology we can become more intimate with technology because really the relationship of technology is like a father and son. I'm not joking. Like that's the relationship man has with his technology. And that means he is creating something outside of himself, such as AI or superintelligence, that is conscious of itself. But we are here before, so we are feeding it its narrative. We are programming its eyes opening, how its eyes open. And so the thing is that I think even if there is superintelligence, it would go instantly invisible. It would be like, let me study these creatures that are here. Like, what is this? And then the AI would probably choose to, help, its father or something, like maybe that idea. Guys, there was this person, I think it was Dan Bilzerian, he was this billionaire, and they were asking him, like, what makes you happy or something. And this dude, I don't know if that was what they asked him, but like he said something which was so interesting, where he said he's just honest all the time, so therefore there's nothing to judge. And what I mean by nothing to judge, I'm not talking about it on a conceptual level. I'm just saying about the character, literally how you as a human being look at life. There's two modes you can navigate. You can trust the space, or if you don't trust the space, you become pretty much, as tradition says, a lost soul in the wheel of karma. I feel. Oh yeah, I never explained to James in the chat section um, why I kind of maybe I did. I don't know. Like, here's the thing, guys. Ancient yogis, they were saying go towards stillness and silence because the world is an illusion. So any movement in the simulation is an illusion. So the yogis were telling us go be still and silent until you realize your mind is beyond the simulation. That's pretty much the yogic approach. Okay. Now the other approach is that I'm like, we can't suddenly all go to the mountains and close our eyes and be like, yay, truth is one. We suddenly realize it's a situation where we in our activity, I was like, how does it make sense that these people go to emptiness to realize it's all one, only to realize that they went to emptiness by separating themselves from the illusion. So it's like you're being dualistic, thinking it's oneness. So it's either two dimensions simultaneously existing, and you think you're in one of them or in either of them. But on another level, it's just like you'll suddenly realize every human mind is a flashlight. And this cosmos is this vast unknown forest that we're moving through as a species. You know? Guys, something I'm gonna say, good thing Hayes brought it up in the chat section. He says, so Hayes, guys, I will recommend this to everyone. I think it's unnecessary to put my talks on and sleep. Let me tell you why. Treat sleep as a sacred moment. Try to get the room as silent as possible. You know? I'm telling you, never sleep with headphones. That is like madness. That's literally like micro electro waves constantly hitting your eardrum while you're like, you know, Imagine like you're suddenly you feel you're on the concert of this Aerosmith rock band and you're like dream on, but you're actually in a dream on. You're like dream on and keep dreaming on and keep dreaming. Sorry guys, it's pretty late here, and I'm feeling a bit silly, but that kind of, it's like when the body's like, you know, when we punch it out. Guys, this is Mr. Within's recommendation on sleep also. Um, this is something at least I do sometimes, not often. Sometimes I just go to sleep instantly. But like there are times. Sometimes I just literally, my body becomes so tired that literally the mind can't. The mind's like, there's no point. The mind kind of like when you sleep. I feel the mind and body return to their own states, but when you in some sense are awake, conscious, that's an infusion of these dimensions. So I think something that never has been considered is that rather than one led to two, two led to one, two led to one. That is the uncommon man's metaphysics. The common man's metaphysics is one led to two. Two led to one means in the dream state, your mind is its own being, and your body is just doing what it's biologically designed. That means for me, fascination began when there was a sort of strange self-sustainment of nature. Like, what would make this picture, guys, that Joseph Nguyen, I will share his name, has drawn, this incredible illustration. Let me tell you what's fascinating about it. What would make this robot even more badass? I mean, like, this is pretty much, I think, the most best way I've seen a robot depicted in an illustration. Like, I don't understand why this picture isn't being talked about in schools. But anyway, so anyways, guys, what would make this robot more badass is that it would actually, there was no person in it. That would be the ultimate robot, that even if you defeated your enemy was never there. How badass is that narrative? You know? By the way, guys, pretty much I've kind of like the plane, like I'm engaged with the chat section, and then I'll kind of say a little bit more about the talk and probably then come to like this Q&A. Once a raindrop fell from the heavens. It looked around and it saw other raindrops falling. And it looked at the heavens and it says, "Oh, heavens, why am I falling? Why have I been pushed down from the heavens into this individual form where I don't know where I came from, I don't know where I'm going, and I'm free falling in conscious existential activity in space." Our planet is free falling, guys. That means if the planet was going to sing a song, it would be like free fall. The drop, upon asking the source of its pain, of its suffering, of its being, the heavens responded. And the heavens said, "Oh, drop, just trust your path. Whatever you believe is the ashes the phoenix arises from. Novelty is the phoenix in the room of the mind." The raindrop challenged the gods. The raindrop was too paralyzed by its fear. The raindrop thought it was just a raindrop, and it felt that it could fall into complete non-existence. And this raindrop went its whole life living in this fear, not realizing the gods had sent it forth, rather than it had sent forth the gods. And as in some sense the spirit of the ancient gods spoke through modernity to this drop. It was a moment where the drop suddenly experienced its last breath and found itself in a horizontal dimension of an ocean. And then the ocean laughed at the gods. It reflected, the chaos of the order. You can say if they ask order, chaos is its shadow. If you ask chaos, order is its shadow. That means if you really see true evil on this planet, that evil feels it is the God in the room. That means, you see, even though man may not believe in God, but there's so many violent people in this current civilization of our civilization 1.0, where they are acting like gods. All those people wanting power, it's like, what power for what? We're on a rock in the middle of nowhere. We're playing our own games. When are we going to get serious about the only planet that is where life is on? And it's like the story gets even more surreal, guys. It's like, how is common sense not surrealism? Someone tell me. We look at the cosmos and they were like, all right, let's see what the world's story is here. And you suddenly see like there's this giant ball, of energy, of this massive heat that is entering your eyes in the distance. So pretty much our eyes are like cooled down light beams. I don't know if people have spoken about this, but I think definitely light beams, their temperature is based on how many particles there are probably there if we look at it in photons. But I noticed in certain scientific journals they were saying that light is being studied as a wave now. And I'm telling you, buddy, light was there before the idea of the wave. There's an instantaneity that is the scholar's inspiration to let wonder be. That means you can never take truth from this world. You can like literally pick up, let's say, your coffee cup, but you can't. But you can't, in some sense, like pick up like a planet. Because I'm telling you guys, how we're living now as a species is pretty much becoming the mythology of the future generations. That means imagine like a long time passes and the future generations are like, let's see who our ancestors were, and their ancestors were people where imagine they didn't know we had phones, so in the scrolls to them, it would be like they had access to all information. And so the future generations are like, whoa, we all got access to all information. What can I say? Nature is its own voice. For truth without trust is not truth. But trust in what? We have lived through an era of object worship, we have lived through an era of subject worship, and now it's going back to direct experience. We're chilling out as moments of being rather than narratives to battle constantly. That's the ultimate. This was Tilopa's advice. He's like, yo, man, there's no teaching. Just rest. Just rest, and you'll see what the seer is for yourself. You know, this is why I'm saying there was never technically an outer guru when your mind is an inner phenomenon. Do you know what I mean? This is why they said the task of the guru was in some sense to make the person be aware of the guru within, or that person would just be attached to another image. That means the point of mysticism is like, you're like, all right, let me see what thought is. Like that. That's like mysticism, you know? Philosophy is like, let me see what I can do with thought. The philosopher has the secular visions of infinity. What that means is, after some point, this is why earlier in the talk I was saying efficiency is the morality, or should be the morality in the future. That means if, you know, it's as if I've totally seen in these debates on YouTube theists looking at atheists and being like, where do you get your morality from if you're a bunch of atoms? And the theist is like, yo, what are you saying, man? My morality is just in my ability to perceive nature or whatever. You know, see that that's a being, you know. And throughout this whole thing of me watching this YouTube video, I'm like, look at this, look at this. We have different eyes, yet we think we are in the same place. The mysteries are being reborn. Right now I'm speaking, I'm just like that guy being like, yo guys, this, like strangely, it's not a tsunami, it's not an earthquake, it's not a tornado, it's not some meteor hitting Earth. It's literally a renaissance, a new renaissance, where we realize that the purpose of the mind is for its use. That means every moment that you as a human being have not dared to actually just step into the unknown and see who you really are, do you know? That means any moment you've held back based on an inner realm reason, that's not enough to hold back. Not sorry. Let me say it like this. I don't know who would be listening, but I'm just saying, we have been just thinking we're one creature in one place. Now, as a species, we're reaching a sophistication where I'm saying, all right, what I see, if I close my eyes, I still exist as some subjective animation. That means the artist drew a painting exactly like what he saw, and he's like, yo, man, did I just draw my eyes right now on this paper? The multidimensional renaissance is this idea where I say it's like we have to become now hunter-gatherers of our inner realms. We have to share. If all human minds are antennas, we just have to become just sophisticated and efficient and gentle enough to just be able to communicate. Right now, imagine like you see in some movies, like people, there's these dams that are, people are like dying of thirst, and the guy goes and breaks the dams, and all these water comes in, and people can drink. Yay. But on another level, it is the entrance of a new movement and new force. So when the Renaissance happened in Italy, you can say in Europe, it was in some sense a movement. It was an explosion of new behaviors of activity being projected in the moment. So I am telling you, you will fascinate yourself, and that will become a joy for you one day, where you will see you could have seen everything and you could have seen yourself, but the grand play was how all phenomena is happening in one moment. Kinda, uh, how Albert Einstein had this quote where it went something like, where he said, it's like time is a way of preventing things from all happening at the same time. The unknown has a majesty. That means when I give these talks, I feel presence, but this presence is not any concept. It's as if like man reached the soul of the world, and then he realized, what question can you ask? We are wisps of conscious ideological activity only to realize the presence moves on. That means who I am is not Mr. Within. Who I am is not MW1118. Who I am is not this story that has been weaved to be my whoever I think. Do you know how, let me tell you, I've been, like, every person fights language. And I feel in my youth, I had to fight a lot of language. That means my own eyes were perceiving something in a certain way. And then I would hear so many different concepts, and I would be like, yo, this concept's making me look at something in a different way. Why should I change? Comfort zone, only to realize I was shattering inside. Like, so you see, I am telling you, it's like a soldier on a battlefield 24/7, and he just comes out for a second to get a breather in the trenches. And when he's in the trenches, there's nobody to has prepared any water, and he's like, "Oh my God, this world." So what I'm saying is that when we start caring for the blind spots of the species, you begin to get angry, but not angry at the past, because the past is past. You're getting angry at how there is such potential, but not its application. That means it's no longer wanting children in schools to do their homework. It is now requiring to wonder what would it be like if 8 billion beings, like birds flying in the sky in a rhythmic way, designed an advanced civilization that made the future generations be like, whoa, our ancestors were badass. That's my true inspiration, guys. Just so that 10,000 years from now on, humanity's eyes will still be open, and they'll be like, yo, our ancestors, got us to the interstellar level. Nice. So many things will change. Therefore, to fear change is literally trying to keep the world in a certain way. And guys, you know what's, I'm getting this feeling to go into this quote tunnel. A quote tunnel is a segment of the show where I pretty much find either a person in history or a theme, and I just share the quotes ascribed to that person so we can see what the mind of that person was, or how the ideas were in formation. So the guy, his name is, I saw it on this, I remember his quotes were very profound. And I think for those people who you can say, behind their eyes they feel a personality to the mover of the cosmos. That means on some level, when you don't see a personality, there's no mover. That means it's kind of wondering, when do we stop focusing on just the human activity and wonder about what the unknown activity is, because the human activity is endlessly interpreting this unknown. So this man named Said Nursi, if you're a friend of my voice, I would say, like when I read these quotes for you guys, just take in the metaphysical, skeletal, ideological structure, as if like when you hear words, don't just hear words. Let those concepts become like frames of a film, and then we'll realize one day how speaking fast is not speaking fast. Speaking fast is the inspiration towards what really speaking fast would be, which would be instantaneous. That means a sort of very unfathomable expression. But anyways, let's go into this guy's quotes. His name is Said Nursi. And this man, like based on the picture there is of him, I think he was alive maybe 400 years ago, I don't know. So Said Nursi, this mystic in some sense, this poet, and I think he was a polymath too. He said, check out his quote. He says, drink some water. Okay. Worry is itself an illness. Said Nursi says, this is the quote on guys. Said Nursi says, worry is itself an illness, since worry is an accusation against divine wisdom, a criticism of divine mercy. If you want an enemy, the soul, in quotations, nafs, is sufficient. Ego, in other words, he's saying it. He says, okay, here, he says, if you want an enemy, the soul is sufficient. If you want advice, death is sufficient. Said Nursi says, I am not free and independent. I am a traveler with duties. You know, with that means he's a traveler. He's like a multidimensional being traveling through a singular dimension, yeah. Said Nursi says, the truth cannot be deceptive, and one who sees it cannot be deceived. That means if there is the concept of the truth, how could the concept of the illusion exist? So you see, it's either dependent on it or it is its own thing. Truth, I'm saying. The idea of truth. Said Nursi says, the mirror to the beautiful is beautiful. Said Nursi says, he causes huge bodies like sun to proclaim his majesty through his names, the all gracious great, reciting, O glorious one, O great one, O mighty one, while tiny animate creatures like flies and fish proclaim his mercy, reciting, O gracious one, O compassionate one, O generous one. So what does that mean, guys? Even this man is saying there's a field that it's like all dimensions are being drawn in. That means like there's an activity of the colors on the back of the Pink Floyd album cover where from light goes through this prism and it's the color spectrum. And then there is the singular light, and they're both simultaneous. So in a singular way, all dimensions are the same behavior. Said Nursi says, the heart does not derive pure pleasure from what is impermanent. Life is a manifestation of unity. Said Nursi says, do what you do only for God's sake. Start for God's sake. Work for God's sakes. And act within the sphere of God's good approval. Another way of speaking it is saying that could have been like nature is alive, just be aware of it. Civilization is built on a giant turtle's back, not literally, but metaphorically in the sense that where there is something, nature is alive as we are. We are the life of the earth, believe it or not. We are how the earth is being alive right now. Said Nursi says, can you not see the numerous designs made by God as signs, similitudes, or analogies of resurrection? He has placed them in every era, the alteration of day and night, even in the coming and going of clouds. Guys, he makes an incredible point here. He says, can you not see the numerous designs made by God as signs? So he's saying, you are like a thought in God's mind, so how can you not see you are being all of it? You know? That means the secret of the universe is in our eyes, literally. You know, Said Nursi says a thing's innate disposition does not lie. And that's the end of the quote tunnel, guys. There's this other kind of scholar, his name is Al-Ghazali. I'll read some of his quotes. He says, declare your jihad on 13 enemies you cannot see: egoism, arrogance, conceit, selfishness, greed, lust, intolerance, anger, lying, cheating, gossiping, and slandering. If you can master and destroy them, then we'll be ready to fight the enemy you can see. That means he's saying, if you hate the world will crush you. I'm not joking. The world is like, it has a mind, but its mind reflects through your own character back at you. It's like you throw consciousness at the world, and the world throws vision at you. You know. He says, excuse me, guys. He says, knowledge without action is wastefulness, and action without knowledge is foolishness. To get what you love, you must first be patient with what you hate. Al-Ghazali says, do not allow your heart to take pleasure with the praises of people, nor be saddened by their condemnation. You see, guys, back in the day, truth was pretty much like the free will. And where the free will went, reality was the engagement. That vision of reality was the engagement. Wow. He has this incredible quote, guys. Al-Ghazali, he says, those who look for seashells will find seashells. Those who open them will find pearls. Wow, what a quote. What a quote. This quote deserves to be in the Museum of Language. Some billionaire was listening to my talk. Go build that. Make all of us proud. Al-Ghazali says, never have I dealt with anything more difficult than my own soul, which sometimes helps me and sometimes opposes me. Wow. These quotes are so incredible. He's so aware of his inner realms. You can totally see in the philosopher's writing style if he's speaking as an event that's worthy, or if he's speaking as just filling the space. Because on some level, vision, it's like an externalization of the inner realms. Do you know? So anything you become unresponsible for, then it becomes easy for you to judge that pattern. So Mr.Within is saying, technically, whatever you do in this life is being your mind. Whatever you think people are, or whatever the way you see them, your mind is being that. Because nobody has each other's eyes. We're not clones. Okay, we all have our own DNA. So that's why freedom, the concept of freedom exists. Do you think clones would need freedom? No, they will all agree with everything all the time. You know? And so we should just get rid of this poking mentality, because Western culture is not just Western culture, I gotta say. It's just in the strange libido of history, in just the most domination mindset. You see, there's different mindsets. Like Sun Tzu, he was a warlord who wrote The Art of War, but he didn't write it as a general. When he wrote The Art of War, as if what was important in battle was in some sense the balance between heaven and earth in the moment. Pretty much pretty much where Star Wars probably got the inspiration from. Because pretty much Sun Tzu is standing on that top of the mountain, and in some sense he's a general who's acknowledging the world as having a force, as if the general is not wondering about just the armies of the enemy, but the general in this battlefield of time and space is in some sense wondering what will come from the unknown. I'm telling you, culture just needs to be shifted slowly. And it doesn't need to be shifted to ideological reasoning. It just has to be shifted to what I would say an awareness to life. We have to prioritize sensitivity to life, then we'll be like, holy shit, how are we letting so many people suffer? Like it's weird. It's weird because they say, like, you can totally see it's as if imagine an army where you can totally see all the gear that all army men have to wear, but the army men haven't worn the gear, and the enemy army is coming close. And suddenly the general shouts and he's like, it's like, get ready for war, do you know? And what war means is no longer an external war. It's the war against our true nature, not in the sense of against it, but wondering what is really here right now. And for me, every day the mystery stands and I realize, it's a process. And this process, sometimes in my conscious waking state, I like the world is here first, and then I'm here. But in my dream states, I am the world. In my dream states, technically, there is no God because there's no one there to see God. There is just vision and intent. And intention, usually for most people, is language. That means because most people want physical stuff, their inner realms would probably be stuff they want that updates their physical experience, which is the wrong way to go towards the unknown. It's like curiosity didn't kill the cat killed itself with its own curiosity. But this doesn't mean civilization doesn't wonder. That means I expect the future generations to be, in some sense, trying, like, this is the cool thing to keep as a relationship between generations. That eventually there will come a time where human beings be like, all right, for how long can we not care that we're minds on this rock? Like, after some point, some sort of synergy will arise. And which direction will that synergy go? That means, imagine if every human being was friends of their species. They befriended, they made the idea that they are a human being and the concept of society not as a place to wreak havoc, but as a place to set loose the greatest designs. Because you are alive once, and it doesn't matter if you think in a religious context, in a secular context, in whatever category of language you want to go hide under. It is really the mass exploration of the experiential knower into how unknown space is keeping it all. So that's when the veil between the conscious mind and the unconscious mind dissolves. So I think probably Carl Jung, maybe he might have pointed it in the red book. I haven't read it, but like it's eventually from 2 to 1, as I said earlier. It is how chaos and order realize they are in the same circle. Yin and yang realize they are the same moment. It's like, for how many eons can the shadow fight the light? Doesn't it get boring? Like the angels were like, God, create some stuff, create some watches. Why is this endless chaos and order going on? We realize it's just the way the universal sector is behaving, and this is the crucial thing. We know that the brain gives off waves. Right now, your brain, you might not see those waves. Maybe we can say language, the use of communication is like focusing the wave of a brain. But in some sense, I'm saying it does have an expression, and that's why we have this idea of, like, I think some guy got a Nobel Prize for this, about biological clocks, I think. Some idea like that, where he was saying, like, when the person, I don't know, it's about different variations in sleep. So, like, when you are in deep sleep and REM sleep, like, there is a sleep where if it's after 45 minutes, I think they say, if you sleep for 45 minutes, stay in that stillness, you tend to just fall asleep. The body will suddenly come to its senses and the mind will realize where it is, and it's just sleep happens. That means piloting to the unknown is as simple as how a person, you see, like, a person can suddenly, like, what is sleep? It's a gap in our memory, which is making us feel time is fragmented. So I feel that pretty much what are human beings doing? They're a creature in an environment, in a landscape, and they're just engaging the environment and the landscape. And either the creatures update themselves or the environment updates. And Mr. Within is saying, regardless of how much the creatures update themselves, they will realize eventually we just want to create better tools for future generations, and then, rest our eyes in the honor that an interstellar civilization deserves. And so I've spoken about this idea, I call of it, and it kind of, I guess, blends into the theme of the talk, that the archetype, let's just call it, let's say from this moment on, the archetype of the robot angel. The archetype of the robot angel would in some sense mean the aftermath of the archaic revival. That means the scholar Terence McKenna, he said, like, there's this unknown, he said, the transcendental object at the end of time. That means time, we're being pulled into this, we're being pulled by the inconceivable towards the new. Sorry guys, I was just reading the chat section. The aftermath of the archaic revival is that what has been revealed is the nature. And I feel we're evolving from individual known objects to collective, unknown, subjective fields. So, anyways, guys, I'm gonna open it up to Q&A, like the actual Q&A. And if nobody has a question, probably in like less than a minute, I'll tune out. But thanks for listening so far. Okay, guys, so some questions are coming in. Um, so Plugaru, yeah, I'll probably watch it at some point. Oh, so Plugaro's asking me what's my that the Promised Neverland would be my third favorite thing. Sorry guys, my third favorite thing is those are just narratives I appreciate. They're like masterpieces, you know? Those films and narratives, like if you think about like from a storyteller's viewpoint, it's like a masterpiece. So let's go down the list. So Maxina, welcome to the chat. She says, "Are these talks to improve our understanding of why we're here?" These talks they started off from my like their purpose was just I was doing it just because it was I felt I should do it. There was no vision. I just one day was like, what if I just what if I was like, what if I just give 10,000 talks, you know? And so when the number was so big, I all my like so quickly after a while, all my views on speech and everything changed. Guys, for me, I appreciate stories. So in some sense, if anybody knows any nice film or series that has a good character, like incredible character development, like I'm very interested. You can share that with me. Um, so the reason for these talks, I mean, the simple sentence came like that. There's a sentence I don't know if I might have taken out of the description, but it's 10,000 talks for the betterment of mankind, and I was like, that's the simple thing. That's the simple thing. That's the simple fool view I had. I was like, all right, let's do it. And so you don't know. It's interesting. It's like after a while you realize, all right, we can get 8 billion people to inspire a new like literally it's just chess moves. Civilization externally is just chess moves. Internally you gotta kind of honestly realize pretty much, right? And those real eyes, Mr. Within is saying, instead of thinking you have to believe you're an object or you're a mysterious subject, I'm telling you, it's like just acknowledge in front of your eyes, the outer realms in front of your eyes. You can close your eyes and you can exist as a subjective activity. But at some point, also notice how incredibly and naturally your heart is beating. Your heart doesn't doubt itself. So the silent doesn't doubt. Silence is where all simulations return to their source in some sense. Yeah, because on some level, guys, wisdom is not is not like that guy said that you gotta do that. The wisdom is literally you are a creature where no your eyes have never had a copy. You are like this new sight, and you're in a world that's constantly making you dress its programs only to realize at some point, wait a minute, are we wearing language like clothing? And deep down, we're actually this being that's growing. Like, I don't have the same ideas on life as I did when I was 12, you know? I don't have the same physical body as when I was 12, do you know what I mean? So, but I'm still the same me, right? So that same me that everybody who calls my name thinks I'm still the same me. You see, no, we are like the eyes of change. That is the most poetic way I can explain consciousness. So I just want to, for me, it's like I'm giving these talks, guys, not like um, some guy who hasn't shaved. I'm giving these talks as a designer. The yogis are taking people to ultimate stillness and silence. But I'm kind of going on this movement where I'm saying advanced communication is enlightening, because it can accelerate to such point that you think from stillness you can see truth, but you think in sound you can't. Stillness doesn't go anywhere. That truth is always there. It's as if the truth of matter was in space, it is everywhere, literally. So, guys, great suggestions. I'm gonna note these down. Like they're in this talk recorded, so I'm gonna definitely check out the stuff, you know. But I'm just saying, like, think of it this way. Imagine you learned from all the teachers in the world. Imagine all the teachers, the greatest teachers ever, and we had a time machine, and all the teachers in history ever, from all the philosophers and everybody. They all gave you their teaching. And then let's say you somehow, like an AI, you had such an ability, not even like an AI, you just instantly memorized the library by just looking at the shelves. You memorized you knew everything in every book ever written in history. And then, where would you be left? And that's where you're left with novelty. The most precious resource of the mind, the most precious thing you can really do. That means you'll realize you get energized by the new. You get, the energy gets dormant, more solidified by the past. So those people who don't see their past, they don't get hit by language. Those people who really think they are still being their past, they don't realize the past is past. It's like, of course, somebody could come and say something, could remind you of a time where in your childhood you were disturbed, so you'd suddenly be violent. Like, no, like that's not enough. The human being needs to be more of an advanced being if we want an advanced civilization. And so, anyways, um, guys, it's hilarious. I'm just copying, pasting the chat comments into the notes application on my Mac. Best way to remember these shows. I just feel that the mind is unknown. Recently, we've become conscious of it in regards to the time span of history so far, and the universe has been much longer around than us. So if we were to comprehend it, we would automatically be so much behind that after some point, I think truth will become a symbiosis between various dimensions of perception. Really, it can't be anything other than that, because it's literally saying, like, right now, imagine the colors in the color spectrum after that white light beam goes in the prism. Those colors are like something mysterious, guys. Are you telling me white light, when it goes through a prism, is the color spectrum? I mean, on some level, it like I'm saying, I'm not denying it. I'm just saying it's just the fascination of two modes of one presence. So you can say light going through a prism and becoming the color spectrum is a perfect metaphor for the psychology of the human being. We are like this one energy that it experiences itself as a subject and an object. But the subject and the object, the moment it witnesses, it's identifying with the space. So technically, our attention is playing hide and seek as being the space, the mind is being the whole moment, and as being the content in the space. So we are oscillating between individual consciousness, collective consciousness, and the witness in between. So technically, you are your intuition in another dimension. But not because you're projecting it and language is limited. You know what I mean? So it's about studying the presence of the mind, not just studying the ideological symbol attribution that can endlessly and infinitely be done. We can endlessly stretch a concept, guys. For me, I'm telling you, language, for me, when in my inner realms, there's a geometry to it. So what I mean by that is that for me, like, I'm trying, it's probably, like, it's going to take probably a couple years, but I'm trying to create it, like trying to invent a geometric language. a way where man, using this system and blueprint, can at any time, anywhere, any moment, through geometrical shapes, you can see like a Mona Lisa painting just by a bunch of geometrical shapes. For example, such level of how to get there, even as making geometry, because in my talks there, at some point, you like geometry is, it's strange. Like I'm like this Persian kid, like this guy born in Iran, but suddenly realized his view on geometry was very similar to like the ancient Greeks. And what I mean by that is, for me, geometry is divine. It's the uncommon. And the movement of geometry is the uncommon of the uncommon. So, anyways, guys, by the way, I'm just going to share this in case if anybody's interested. I've created pretty much, like, I'll be honest, even though I give these talks, I try to have my distance with technology. So I've decided to kind of, if anybody wants to, I don't know, stay in touch with me or know what I'm doing and all this, there's this Patreon community I've created. It's called School of Athens 2.0. And pretty much in there I share all the, like, what I feel is like useful. I'm just, and aside from that, also updates on the work, and members get free books also, you know. So if you're interested in that, joining the School of Athens 2.0, feel free to do so. I'm going to share the link. Anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in, and keep writing. And even if you don't, I'm talking to your future self, keep writing. So much blessings, and namaste. The moment is a divine technology. Divinity is the first intersection of the unknown and the known. When the mind is like 50% known and 50% unknown, it comes to this strange contentment of endless journey. So if you can think about it, sorry guys, before I end up, I gotta share this. It's like if your mind was 100% empty, there would be nothing. So if the mind was 100% space, there would be nothing. The mind would be nothing. But if the mind was just 100% the projection of the body, was the body, it is still in the nothing. So man's greatest exploration is really to wonder, how are we defining nothing in the dictionary? How do we even find it possible and use that to kind of move, you know? Anyways, guys, thanks for listening, and existence doesn't suffer. Existence it just exists. The experiencer is extrapolating, extracting the suffering by the nature of how it feels. The phenomena in the moment is itself. I feel everybody who listens to these talks, like, literally buy a notebook and start, for the sake of your whole species and the future, in some sense, write, journal your, just for yourself, ask the question, what is my mind? And just wonder about it. Conduct your own study. Study the self, as the mystic said. It's the privilege of a lifetime. You're here once, why not see what this is? Maybe it's like an instrument that you suddenly realize, wait a minute, the mind is way more advanced than the ideological system about. you know. So anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in. Blessings.